He's okay. Me and Dan living it up.
Huh?
Dan living it up.
Yeah, exactly. Always.
Yeah, an assignment. That was his
Yeah.
email. Yeah. Big case.
Right. Oh, yeah.
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 So you're gonna do it?
Just give me one more minute. Tell me when you're ready.
Oh, I'm ready. I'm sorry. Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Okay. Everybody ready? You good? Okay. Welcome to the Essex Junction Trustees meeting. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody, on a slushy night. Thanks for coming. I think we're going to have a slightly curtailed meeting. We're going to probably trim a few things off the agenda so that some people who had to drive a great distance wouldn't have to come. There will be no executive session, for example. And I think, is there anything else we're going to cut from the agenda tonight, Evan? I think, is that it, just the executive session piece?
We're gonna touch on the move rolling stock 6B.
6B,
but
we're
the
gonna-
tough questions, I will try to answer, if not.
Do you want, I think we can, I think that it's not a problem just to put that, table that entire thing until the next meeting. Would that be good to do? or-
That's up to your board members. I could try to answer some questions, and if not, we could table.
Yeah, because, yeah.
I know I had a lot of questions, and we so we
I
could
did
even
too.
meet off. Yeah, so
I had a
maybe-
lot of questions.
Then why don't we wait? I think
Okay.
that's a good idea.
Okay.
So when we get there, we can just, you can, I can
I think
ask
we
for
can
it to be tabled.
Yeah, well, I think, why don't you ask for it to be tabled now, and we'll also table the executive session until those two items until our next meeting.
So, Mr. President,
Yeah.
I would like to table 6B
Mm-hmm.
and 10A.
Sounds good. Do I have a motion? Should we accept the agenda change?
I move we accept the agenda as requested.
Okay, any further discussion? Did I get a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Is there Evan, is just anything being added to the agenda tonight?
No.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll table those until our next meeting. I think that's a good idea. And so, now we're on to audience to be heard. Anyone in the audience have a question, comment about something that's not on the agenda tonight? Good, okay. So, we are now on to very special, I thought the flowers were for me. Apparently not, just kidding.
They're beautiful.
They are. We're on to a really, really great item here. And this is a resolution of appreciation for Mary Ann Reardon. Mary Ann was minutes taker for how many years, Mary Ann?
34.
34. Mary Ann, can you come up and join us?
Right out of 8th grade.
I'm trying to think 34 years ago. How many have been?
34 years ago, so think about where you were, if you were even born.
I was born. 34 years
I
ago.
was sitting in this room.
You were sitting in this room.
Wow.
I've seen a lot of changes,
Yeah.
staff and board and in the
Probably
village.
And besides the present Board of Trustees, which we all know is the best, right, what was some of the other highlights? Do you remember anything else that occurred? Was there anyone ever actually come to blows in a trustee meeting or anything like that?
No, there actually was a well-oiled machine.
Uh-huh,
And conflict was resolved.
uh-huh,
Sometimes it took a few meetings,
Yep.
but I think what impressed me the most was the dedication of the workers and the staff and the boards to doing what's best for the village. And that was the common prevalent theme through all those years.
Mhm.
All the changes of the boards, no one came in with an agenda aside from what's in the best interest of the village.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
It was interesting, yeah. It was-
That's wonderful. That is really interesting.
Yeah, and since I grew up here, it was great too, so, I'm glad they were looking out for the village and all the villagers.
Right. And how have you changed over those years in terms of what, I'm sure, I know all kinds of changes, but what were some of the highlights?
That you want to share with us.
On camera.
Now, were you,
Pounds?
Mary Ann, were you married back?
I was married.
You were married, but you're a grandma now.
I'm a grandmother now.
Wow.
yes, Yeah.
Wow.
Start my babysitting duties tomorrow, so. Yeah, so a lot of, for me, well, grew up here, saw a lot of, I grew up here when there were no traffic lights at Five Corners.
It's
There
unbelievable.
was a blinking light. Yeah.
Right.
And, you know, it was just a wonderful village to grow up in. It was great. No high school, that was all fields. The brickyard was a working brickyard. And the high school was Albert E. Lawton School, which is the middle school. And I went to school at Summit Street, and well, Hiawatha was there, and then we had to do split sessions because we were kind of growing faster than the school, so we had double sessions. Some people went in the morning and some people went in the afternoon. Then the high school got built. Yeah, so, and that kind of helped. But we were IBMers. We came here in '57 when IBM came here, and my father was one of the original 25 people who opened this plant up here.
No kidding.
Wow.
Yeah, so, long history.
Wow, that is a lot of history.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a
Fantastic.
great place to grow up. So changes for me, I got married, moved away, came back, and now I live in a neighboring town, which does an okay job on the roads, nothing like the village.
All right.
As soon as you get into the village.
You know you're in the village,
Yeah.
exactly. We like that. That's
Great job.
That's right. That's right. That's what it's all about. Okay. Well, now on to the fun part, and this is great. I'm going to read a resolution, which we approved. Whereas Mary Ann Reardon has served as recording secretary for the Village of Essex Junction since 1984, and whereas Mary Ann Reardon has been extremely reliable, flexible, and professional in her responsibilities, including but not limited to the Board of Trustees, Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Adjustment, Capital Program Review Committee, and whereas Mary Ann Reardon has produced excellent, clear, and concise minutes at all times, and whereas Mary Ann Reardon worked tirelessly, including countless times in the wee hours. And this is a good example on a slushy night. Even to get even you know you don't have to, you're still here. To return minutes to the Village of Essex Junction in a timely manner, and whereas Mary Ann Reardon has been a tremendous asset to the Village of Essex Junction, now therefore be it resolved that the trustees of the Village of Essex Junction, Vermont, express our sincere gratitude to Mary Ann Reardon for her 34 years of hard work and dedication as recording secretary. Thank you. And these flowers, Mary Ann, are not for me. I'm going to pass them down.
I'm not with flowers.
And there's a box to put them in.
The transport box. Here's the
Oh,
box.
perfect.
Put the things that will die.
Right, do you put?
Yeah, put that in,
Oh,
put
and
that
then
over.
I'm gonna pass
Oh,
that
great.
down.
Thank you very much. You did not have to.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Believe me.
It's,
Stat-
Mary Ann, it's the least we can do. We owe you, the whole village owes you so much. And I don't think, you're one of the unsung heroes, and we really do. Everyone owes you so much more than this.
Really, I pale compared to your staff and the boards. They're the worker bees that make this engine run, so.
Yep, I know.
Thank you for coming
Well,
in.
thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Night, morning.
And Mary, don't feel like you have to stay, please. Don't stay until the wee hours.
I hear you. Well, it is unusual I get to leave the meeting.
Right.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great
So glad I got to
holiday.
know everybody too. That's been another wonderful thing. I got to know a lot of people I wouldn't otherwise get to know.
The pleasure was all ours.
Well, don't be a stranger.
Yeah.
You know where to find us on Tuesday nights. and
Yeah.
Some of us every day of the week.
Around, yeah.
You know, and Mary, if you ever move back here, you'd be an awesome trustee.
Right.
Hey.
You know the
have
whole
a lot
place
of
inside
institutional
now.
memory.
I did that in Williston.
Yeah, my
Been there, done that.
All right.
I know, yeah, that's true. Wait till I get old and I start babbling. See you later.
Thanks.
Have a
Thank you
good
so
night.
much.
Okay, so we are, now Darby, we're on to a memo about the the EV charging station and also about the animating infrastructure grant. Are you gonna do both of these, or are you prepared?
Yes, I am.
Okay, hand it over to you.
All right, so the first thing is an update on the electric vehicle charging station grant.
At your last meeting, I came here to talk about a grant application for an electric vehicle charging station across from the train station. It's looking like that wasn't going to quite work out, so I started looking into some other possibilities, and unfortunately, this one just wasn't in the cards for a variety of reasons. But this grant is VW settlement money, and it is anticipated to come around. And I know they changed the guidelines drastically from previous electric vehicle grants, so it's possible that they'll change them again. So we've got a lot of good information, and should this come around again, some good knowledge and a chance to do it again.
Yeah, I would say that these, looking at all the EV charging stations at the high school, the town office, over here, these keep coming around. So maybe it is a good idea to have in our back pocket a couple of places already ready to go. So when an opportunity comes up, we hit it. I'm gathering from what I've read of these is that everyone, when they're going around, they're kind of, all the municipalities are doing a lot of the same things that we are, where they're kind of sticking them off. Oh, well, you got a spot over there behind the garage kind of thing. And I think they're kind of beginning to say, no, we want them in the middle. We want them in a more prominent place, so.
Yes, and
I'm
I
guessing that's what's
definitely plan
happening.
to coordinate with the Energy Committee to see about developing some kind of a plan
Yeah,
and a vision for where these would make the most sense.
okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, so any questions about this? Everyone good with that?
Thank you.
All right.
So we are now on to the animating infrastructure grant.
Do you want to go?
Sure.
Everybody-
So Darby's doing the hard work, and I just sort of gave her the hard work.
Yep.
So, you remember my talking to you about having the potential of putting a mural up on the wall that borders the multi-use path.
Right.
So the McClure folks are very excited to be on board. They have given the village permission to use their building to have a mural put on it. And the Vermont Arts Council has a grant called the Animating Infrastructure Grant, which municipalities can use to apply for public art projects. And so we are submitting a letter of intent, and that is what Darby is preparing. So I'm gonna let you take it from there.
Yep, and so this is a pretty competitive process. What happens is first we get our letter of intent, a fairly short description. We've assembled a project team. They take a look at ours and everybody's from all over the state. They pick a handful of them to submit a full application. We're not quite sure what that looks like. But, so should we move on to the next step, we would definitely be here to discuss submitting the full application.
Right. If we are chosen to submit a full application, you can use the funding to help develop your plan to implement your art project. So it's not like we have to have it ready to go and submit this project that all we need is money for. It's
Right.
not shovel ready.
Right. Right.
So, and Darby, would you share the names of the folks who are going to be our committee to help us put this together?
Sure, we've got Elaine and myself. We've got Kristen Humbarger from the Hub. We've got Tina Logan, who's an art teacher at ADL. She recommended Journey Blaine, who's an art teacher at EES. We've also got Anne Gray and Tim German from the Essex Historical
Oh, it's
Society.
pretty.
Great.
And Rosh.
Oh,
Right.
thank you. How could I? And Raj Chawa from the Bike Walk Advisory Committee.
So we tried to identify as many stakeholders as possible, including an art teacher from the town,
Okay.
because we wanted to make it a community-wide conversation piece.
Fantastic.
Great.
And Elaine, for clarification, can you give the location that has been selected for this mural, if it is selected for a grant?
Sure, it will be on the wall, I think it's the south-facing wall? or-
Track-facing wall.
The track-facing wall of the McClure Moving Services building right off of Central Street, and it will border the starting portion of the bike walk, or excuse me, of the multi-use path that goes between Central and, what is that other street?
North.
North.
North Street.
So, is that
Yeah.
clear enough?
Well, for the audience at
Of
home, I
course.
guess. I go by there almost every day, and
Mhm.
it's a big blue wall.
It is a
Yes.
huge wall,
Yeah,
and
it is
it's
a big wall.
primarily, it's part cinder block and part corrugated metal.
And it'd be very interesting, because that street does get a lot of traffic,
Yeah.
both car traffic, walk and bike,
Yeah.
and train
Train
traffic
track, yeah.
with Amtrak.
It would be our first installation of public art in the village, so it would be a really nice thing
Yeah.
to kick that off and maybe have
Fantastic.
more over the years.
Yeah.
Excellent, great. Good to hear it.
Do we need
Okay.
a motion, or are we good?
Do we, yeah, did you?
I think
were
that
you-
was
you
just
need a mo-
information.
I think it was
only.
just
I was
informational,
submitting
you're
a
not
letter of
looking,
intent.
Okay.
I think you're getting all thumbs up from us, I mean,
Yeah.
to the
Well,
extent that you need it.
normally when you apply for grants, you do approve the going out and getting a grant.
But this is the letter of intent to
Right.
apply. So
Okay.
if we don't get past this stage, we won't be applying.
Okay,
So I
that's
think
fine
maybe
too,
there's,
and that's good, then you're good. You'll get it.
we'll see, it's very competitive.
All right.
Thanks, Darby.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on to new business, and the first item is the village sidewalk policy review in relation to a request by, from someone on Rivendell, Todd Audit on Rivendell, to plow both sides of Rivendell. And Evan, do you want to take this one?
I will be taking this one, Todd is here
Yep.
tonight, I see him behind the camera.
Right.
And maybe if you're of a mind, I could let Todd speak to the
Todd,
issue
Todd
first.
is, absolutely, and if Rick, if you want to come up and add your 2 cents, give some insight, that's fine too. Feel free. Go ahead.
ODIT, O-D-I-T.
Thank you.
Do you mind if I sit here?
Yep, go ahead.
I feel like I'm part of the party.
Yep. So, the issue right now, if I understand it, the issue is we, right now, are only plowing one side of Rivendell. And because under current policy, that is the only, that's all we should be doing. But the issue that Todd has raised is that it's a major thoroughfare for pedestrians and for commuter traffic, which I think the traffic count is indicated, and so you'd like to see it plowed on both sides.
Correct, yeah, I think to me, it's a very narrow issue. Under the policy, as I understand it, there's parameters around which streets are plowed on both sides
Yep.
and which are plowed on one. And there's a caveat in there that basically residential streets that serve as a key connection to schools are to be plowed on both sides.
Yep.
As I read the policy, there's no criteria laid out in the policy to determine what is a key connection. Based on my observations of living on Rivendell and the fact that Rivendell borders ADL and the number of students that walk down there, that it is a key connection to the school. So just under that specific point in the policy that it should be plowed on both sides.
Okay.
I've got I wrote a memo I sent to each of you individually, I don't know if you received it, I've got hard copies here, I also have some statistics that kind of back up my assertion that Rivendell does serve as a collector, and I'll hand these out, if you don't mind passing them down.
Nope.
There's 7 there. My interest in this starts back in 2 years ago when the merged school district announced just before school started that the village wasn't going to be getting bus service. And that has continued when that occurred again this year. Last minute announcement that the village wouldn't be getting bus service, and my daughter starting school at ADL. I moved to Rivendell Drive in 2007 when my daughter was 6 months old. My son, who was born in 2009, didn't exist yet. So I didn't live here when the policy was adopted. So I never really understood why the sidewalk on my side wasn't plowed. Personally, I loved it. I didn't have to deal with the grass, I didn't have to deal
Yep.
with the snow put in the driveway. It was fine by me. But over the years, the neighborhood has churned a lot.
Right.
A lot of older people have moved out, families have moved in.
Right.
And with my daughter going to ADL this year, I've stayed home a little longer to see her out, and I was just amazed at the number of students that were walking down
Yep.
my side of Rivendell Drive. I think one morning I was out there and there were 30 students who walked down this side.
Yep.
There were 2 or 3 who walked the other side. I will say there are a number of people who do walk to Global Foundries, and they do walk down the side that's currently plowed.
Right.
Which makes sense because they're going to Global Foundries and the kids want to walk the shortest route, which is the ADL side, and not have to deal with crossing the 3 lanes of traffic that are there on Rivendell Drive.
Yep.
And, so I made the assertion that it's a major collector. If you look at this agency of transportation map, it shows the traffic volumes on some of the surrounding streets.
Yep.
You can see that Rivendell is 1,200, which is quite a few vehicles for a street with 29 houses. If you look up on Countryside, there's 280.
Right.
Albeit that study was done in 2002. There haven't been many, if any, houses added
Yep.
to Countryside since then. And I think I counted there's 34 houses on Countryside, so about 280 trips in a day makes sense. It's like 6 per household. So I think the data clearly shows that Rivendell does collect a lot of traffic. Mind you, that 1,200 was done in July when school was in session. So I think I'm fairly confident saying that if that traffic study were done during the school year, the count would be higher.
Yep.
Because anyone who's gonna drive their kid to ADL is gonna go down Rivendell, because making a right on Maple Street and a right into ADL is a lot easier than
Yes.
going down Mansfield and taking a left.
Let me stop you for 1 second. I'm going to ask Darby, can you go up, scroll up to the other direction, to the next map? It's the same map you've got here, Todd. Okay, but we've got it go a little bit higher. Yeah, there you go. And if you could move it over to the left a little bit. No, the other way.
Okay.
And up,
There you go.
and then scroll it up a little bit more. No, up the other way.
Okay.
Okay.
There we go.
So right there, no, yeah, okay, down a little bit. I just want to show everybody that what you're, no, scroll it down the other direction, other direction.
This way?
There you go, a
Good.
little bit more, a little bit more. Everyone see where Rivendell is?
Yep.
If you look up, you see sort of the countryside way up there with Beach Street, Brickyard Road, Briar Lane, Mason Drive, and if you see the dotted area right there over Woods End Drive, that's called the Village Walk, which there are houses there now. It was, at that time, that's where the houses were going to be, but I think there's about 30 or 40 units there now. So all of the kids that are going to be walking, if you look down at the very bottom of the screen, which says Maple Street, okay, way down, yeah, over to your left, Darby, that's right there, that's where ADL is, okay? That's ADL. So you can see all of the houses up there, all of them are funneling onto Rivendell. The quickest route for all of them to walk or drive to go to ADL is to go down Rivendell. That's why it gets so much traffic. Okay? I just want to, I'm not trying to sway anyone's idea, but it's unusual for a residential street, but it's because everything funnels into Rivendell. Okay, sorry. Didn't mean to-
No, it's fine. And actually, what is also interesting, there's actually a right-of-way over one of their properties right here to the school.
Right.
So a lot of kids will walk down and then they'll cut the
Cut
corner
across, yeah.
to go across there. And you can even actually walk behind my house and go through the soccer field to get to ADL
Right.
as well.
And the blue is what is plowed now.
Correct. And going back to when I was working for the town in 2005, I'm sort of remembering what the village was going through. There was the phasing out of the machinery and equipment tax.
Yeah.
And there were some other issues, so I think a lot of this was driven by cost savings.
Yeah.
And to me, I don't know why I think they chose the side they're currently doing on Rivendell just out of efficiency, and that's purely it. I don't really think they took into account the number of students. Again, when I moved in, there weren't that many students there. We went trick-or-treating for the first time and all the houses were dark, but that's definitely changed. And even today, there were tracks along the sidewalk on my side of students walking home. My daughter walked home with someone who lives on Woods End, as well as someone who lives up in Corduroy. So that's clearly where the people are going. And I understand there's a fear of maybe setting a precedent. There's going to be other people who might want to come in, but I think this is a very unique set of circumstances that doesn't apply to a lot of other streets in the village. So all I'm asking is that it be considered a key connection. I reached out to the principal at ADL to get her opinion. Copied the superintendent on that communication, and initially she didn't really want, I asked for a letter of support for snow plowing, and I can understand she didn't really want to
Sure.
get into the specifics of
Yeah.
which sidewalks are plowed, but she did agree with me that it is a key walking corridor. So
Right.
I think that is an important factor, and it's just, like I said, it's not for me personally, I like not having to deal with it on my side, but seeing the number of the kids that walk down there, I think it's the safest thing to do. I don't really think it's gonna take a whole lot more time. You know, I don't know how fast the sidewalk plow goes, but I had estimated if it goes at 5 miles an hour, you know, it's probably another 10 minutes, maybe 15 if it has to double back. Maybe it's not even that. I can't even imagine it's much, but, you know, in my opinion, when municipalities put in infrastructure, they should maintain it. And that's all I'm asking for.
The only other thing I will add is, if you look at where Woods End, I noticed that one of the recommendations is to put a crosswalk, is to not plow, but to have a crosswalk at the intersection of Woods End and Rivendell. And the reason I would defer to the engineers and to Rick and to the two Ricks on that, and that's fine, but I would, having gone through that intersection maybe 15 or 20,000 times since I've lived in my home, I can tell you when I come out there, the slight curve, if you see, of Rivendell coming up from Maple Street means that you can't see the cars coming until they're right there. And if there's a snowbank, any kind of a snowbank, then you have virtually no warning. So it's a tricky area to get out. And if you put a crosswalk across there, it'd be difficult for kids walking across, because I think they'd have the same kind of line of sight issue that you wouldn't have if you look at some of the other major streets going off of Maple Street that are straight shots. You can look down and you can see what's coming for a couple of 100 yards away. But Rivendell, because of that slight curve, it makes a crosswalk right there kind of tricky. I'll only add that. But if the engineers think it's okay, then I wouldn't argue with them. But go ahead.
I don't know if you know this answer, Rick might. So I live on School Street, and I know there's a path that's pretty well traveled and is actually the preferred route of the school for the kids to walk, where the crossing guards and everything are. So I'm curious if the school is actually instructing all the families who live up in Countryside in that area to follow this path and come down Rivendell. Are there crossing guards? Is that the preferred route? Or maybe they don't have?
There's no crossing guards.
Okay.
That's another concern with only plowing the side that you currently plow. You walk down and you gotta cross in front of Maple Street, where there's a lot of cars, and when you have 2 lanes of traffic, you usually have cars jockeying,
Yeah.
like to see, and they're more interested in getting out, and, there haven't been any accidents, there might not be, but it's, that's why I think
Okay.
crossing down the required lane is easier, and then just staying and not have to cross again makes, the most sense.
Okay.
But we have a contrary argument now for not doing this, and I don't want to put anyone, Evan or Rick, on the spot, but what are your thoughts on this, about why we would not want to do this and stick with policy?
Well, again, in my memo, you see that I spoke with the superintendent. I don't think we all knew that they were considering busing yet still this year. He says it's going to start in January, which will address a lot of children not necessarily walking to school from past Briar Lane, because they would be more than likely in the busing zone. His comment was there's about, I believe I put in my memo, 27 kids tend to walk, 4 from this particular block. We had the village engineer go out, we took this very seriously, we had him look at the crossing and see what a crosswalk could do, and if we did put a crosswalk there, we would look at doing the school side of Rivendell, plow that side so that the kids would not have to cross it at Rivendell and Maple. The other thing the school COO Brian mentioned was, I may have said superintendent, he's the chief operating officer, is a crossing guard costs $4,800 a year. They would love to put one where they like to put them in a lot of other places, but if they were, that's one of the places on a list of others they would look at. But they want to see, and we talked a little bit about what the impact of busing might do. We don't know,
Yeah.
never had it.
No, you don't.
And so the idea might be to take a wait and see approach of what school busing is gonna do, how it's gonna change patterns. Consider what the engineer said as a cross at Woods End to take people to the west side of Rivendell and then plow the west side of Rivendell down to Maple, thereby not having, cars are definitely trying to, we have a lot of roads, and a lot of places in the village, people would like to be considered a key connector. It's not well-defined. But we have a lot of places where people would like our plows to go. And there are a lot of places, and Rick can confirm this, they don't want us. They do not want us plowing their side of the street. And that's why you've had this policy of getting people's signatures. So they weigh in. We don't mean to do a lot of damage. The problem is the blade is what, 51 inches and the sidewalk's 48? And on a day like this morning, like you're trying to find the sidewalk, and keep your eye up and do it, you tend to cut some of that grass that overhangs and whatnot. So it looks bad. Not that we try to make it look that bad, we try to make it look very good. But there's just a lot of people that don't want us doing their side.
Yeah, bye.
So my biggest, I guess, thought on this is, we are a policy board, and as a policy board, to make sure that we stick with policy and not problem solving. Where I see that we should be focusing our efforts is really with the policy that says for section H, number 4, that Todd had mentioned, that number 4 talks about plowing both sides of the streets that provide key connections to the schools, but there is no definition as to what a key connection to the schools is.
Right.
So I think it's upon us to just figure that part out as to what is a key connection, define that, and then change the policy to have that definition in. And to keep us out of picking, Todd comes today, somebody else comes tomorrow, so we don't have to set that precedent through one-off decision, but rather through a policy statement.
Yep.
So with that said, in my opinion, what it seems like is a street that would be a key connection to schools. Certainly one of the factors that would be a part of that is, does the street actually border the main street that students would take to get to the school? And if it does, then that is a key connection, as well as is it the only street that connects children to that school?
Yeah.
Which there are not very many of, and this is one of the few streets in our community that actually has a sidewalk on both sides. As many of the other
And is a connection to a school.
Right. Many of the other streets, whether it be Hiawatha, whether it be School Street, or whether it be Summit Street, Summit Street does have a sidewalk on both sides.
Right, so do we plow Summit on both sides?
Whereas this is, again, that only example where there is an actual sidewalk on both sides. So, but again, I think we need to go back and say, what do we want to define as a criteria?
So I think that's great. Probably one of the reasons I sometimes don't do very well on this is I'm a problem solver, not a policymaker. And I think Rivendell should be plowed on both sides. And there's a couple of reasons. One, to me, it is a key connection, and I think how you defined it is a policy change we need to make. But I also think we are a walking community at our core. And yes, we merged with a school district that has busing. And yes, there are people who want busing. But we still need to make our community safe for the kids who want to walk to school. And there are so many benefits to walking to school. It's activity the kids are getting that they may not get later in the day. It's being outside, potentially you're walking with your parents, you're walking with other kids. It's a way to kind of get ready for the school day. And I think to say we're not gonna plow because busing might have an impact, I say we stop plowing after busing has an impact. And we say our community is gonna allow and make it safe for both modes of transportation to school.
And in your memo, you said that you and the engineer were looking at painting a crosswalk and signage at Woods End Drive. But I heard you say this evening that you would also plow up to that new.
We had talked about whether we would then plow Rivendell, right, Rick? We talked a little,
I
which
see what
side
you're
of
saying here.
Rivendell we would
Okay.
then,
Like design both sides up.
yeah,
Up to
Right.
that
Yeah,
intersection?
okay,
Yeah.
with that new crosswalk goes in, so it go out to me.
Okay.
So someone coming down with that, cross,
Yeah.
and they can go down without crossing Rivendell.
So that would make sense, because then if you're on that side of Rivendell, then you don't, then you could see around the curb. If you're on the other side. So you'd plow on that, on the other side, and then if someone then cross over, but,
so the idea would be with that crosswalk, we would go from Maple to Woods End on both sides,
Yeah.
but then go only one side around the other way, which has much less traffic.
what is the problem with, I mean, in terms of just in time, what's the problem with plowing both sides of Rivendell right now? Is it a major problem?
It's just to save the time, yes.
Okay,
It's not just the plowing, everybody thinks, well, you drive up, you can drive down it.
Yeah.
But when you get those 2-footers and we're out snow blowing, it
Yeah.
takes a tremendous amount of time for that snow blower
Yeah.
to go that length up there. So instead of like on some of your dead end streets, we'll go up, we'll snow blow.
Yeah.
When you get to the end, they pick everything up, they can put it in high gear, and shoot up to the next one. So
Okay.
we start on that. That's where we save a lot of time. And then, of course, in the spring with the lawn repairs that we do.
And we were thinking of it as a first phase.
Right.
And with busing and what we would plan to do, let's see how it plays out. And if it shows that there is that much more, still that much more traffic, and we discuss the connector road part, we do phase 2.
So my concern with that is it's another crosswalk, which isn't always safe. And so I completely understand you needing to save time, but if we're talking a lot of snow, a crosswalk adding in, I just think the safest route is both sides of Rivendell, which is a true connection. I mean, to me, it's no different than Summit Street. That's just my opinion.
Todd, you had something to add?
Yeah, my only concern with not doing both sides is, given the, I know of a few households right along here who have kids at ADL. If you don't plow this side, then you're forcing them to cross the street mid-block without a crosswalk with high volumes. If you're up in countryside where there's 200 trips a day, it's not that big of a deal. We're talking about 1,200 cars in a day. That's a much bigger deal. In that section of Rivendell, you come around the curve, you got the dip, you're going up. There's not, the driveways don't necessarily line up. Like if you go down to a picture of the crosswalk drawing, or maybe it's up, I don't remember.
It's further, right. It's on the other direction, Darby. Yeah. Oh, there it is.
This is my house right here. There are similarly situated houses where if this side isn't plowed, my daughter's like crossing the street, climbing over a snowbank, walking way down here to get into a driveway, or walking, way down there in the road to get to the sidewalk. And it's a little straighter there, but the house is on, further towards Briar Lane, or just forced to cross willy-nilly without any sort of crosswalk or.
Right.
So there was a cost associated with getting a crossing guard. What's the cost associated with plowing both sides, adding an additional side to Rivendell to plow?
Boy, I don't think throw you a number down.
Yeah, it'd be hard to.
How about time-wise? So,
Yeah, if we're gonna plow, it's probably gonna be another, if it takes its time, should be 10 minutes probably, from one end to the other, that person. And snow blowing, of course, is gonna be way longer than that.
right.
Um,
Which, how often do you snow blow?
When there's enough snow.
I mean, so what, but I mean, so is it
It's
6
been-
inches, is it 12 inches?
No,
Is
it's been
it-
more than that, yeah, once it starts rolling back into the sidewalk, yeah, like I said, some years, you know, we'll do it a bunch, we'll go out 4 or 5 times, 10 times, whatever it is. And then some years, we don't put them on at all.
Right.
So it's, really depends on how much snow we get and how long it stays. It's been quite a factor in the last few years.
I would imagine if for snow blowing, school's canceled, so getting them open in time for school probably isn't an issue.
Right, but then we end up having to solo everything, and that's where we had to delay school before, we've done that in the past, especially with that 36-incher, that
Yeah.
one there, it took us so long to get everything done.
Right.
And then they had, I think they had, actually had to do another day.
Yeah,
And they
I
stretched it
remember
out.
that.
Right, wasn't it? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
My
so
son
something
is-
like that, that was a huge one too, that was a 36, we don't get too many at once.
My son's at home right now doing we were gonna have a snow day tomorrow dance, so.
We'll get them every night, that's what I say.
It doesn't need
They said
36 inches.
though. They said inches, yes, not feet.
Okay.
But yeah, I can't give you a set number.
No, that's
It's
fine.
gonna cost us.
The time is
X
good,
amount.
thank you.
You know, I'm just gonna say to the three of you, I am feeling a little uncomfortable engaging in if we come to a decision here, because I live so close. I think it's, might not be appropriate for me to,
Are you gonna benefit financially from this decision?
I'm not gonna benefit financially, but I'm
You
just
walk
feeling
up
like,
every day?
I walk out there all the time, so it's,
But I think you're.
and it's just, I've got subjective opinions about what should happen, so I think the problem I have is to disengage and be objective, and so
I
I'm
think
I'm
you're
having a.
good, George.
Hmm?
I think you're good.
If it helps.
Really? You sure?
Yes.
Okay, I'll offer to
You
do
live-
that.
Andrew lives off of, in the same direction.
I live on Brickyard
Okay,
Road.
all
I
right.
literally run through here numerous times
Okay,
a
all right.
month.
Okay.
I don't know if you see me running through. and-
Yeah, well, that's the
Yeah.
other thing, outside of the school thing, the Rivendell, the interior of Rivendell, Briar Lane, Mansfield, Maple Street is a very popular,
It's huge, I mean, it's a huge walking path.
but that's not, I mean, the issue here is this key
Right.
school connection.
And the other weird thing is that it makes kids, and it's a very, traffic backs up at the intersection of Rivendell, commuter traffic, because again, if you look at all the houses up there, anyone who is not going towards Burlington, towards Five Corners, anyone who's going to Montpelier or Global Foundries is taking a left there. And so again, it's a big shortcut for people who don't want to go through all the traffic around Five Corners. So in the morning and in the evening, it gets very trafficy. And it always struck me as weird because you're funneling the kids to the wrong side of the road. Then the kids have to somehow get across the you know what I mean? It seems like it should definitely be both sides of the road right there, and you know, I thought it should be both sides all the way. It used to be, but go ahead.
And George, this is why I think that, this is why going back to my original statement, if we can get out of the problem-solving mode, I think what the consensus is yes, Rivendell seems like it should fit a definition of a key connection to the school.
Yeah.
And what we need to do is take some time at maybe the next meeting
And amend the policy.
to have some type of clarification as to what that definition could be.
Yep, okay.
Maybe we spend some time today to help figure some of that out.
Yep, we'll put that on the agenda for the next time to look at the actual policy.
So I think I'm looking at the policy, but, so are there key connections listed?
No.
Right.
Is
No,
that, am I,
it's-
no, it
it's
just
really
says key connections, but not, like Summit Street isn't listed as a key connection.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, Elaine?
Well, I'm also just curious about, the requirement to have a petition from, I think it's every resident on the street, is that? I realize that this is a safety issue when we're talking about it seriously, but if this is one resident asking for a change on the street, I suspect we might get some complaints from folks who are having their lawns plowed up. We do have a policy around doing that. So either we change the policy itself to list the key connections and the criteria for the key connections, or we stick to the policy as it exists now, because I think what Evan and Rick are proposing is a reasonable solution.
Okay.
If I can, and I agree with you, I think that we need to define key connection, and I think having a portion in here where if somebody disagrees with the decision, there should be an ulterior way to fix that solution. I liken it to the speed bump policy, where if I remember correctly, where residents would have to get 60 or 80% of the residents to sign off on such a petition. So making sure that our policy aligns with that, with the rest of our policies that we have in the community. And one of my other concerns with the policy in general, and for some reason I can't find the note, is the research that was used to develop which sidewalks should be plowed, whether it should be one or two. The research was done, if I remember right, was 1996, and the book that was referenced was written in 1988. I think a couple things may have changed since that time.
Mhm.
Not just within research, community development, engineering, but also our community.
Yeah.
Where it makes sense to open this back up for a conversation.
Sure. Yep, agreed. Okay. Okay, God.
I just want to add, one of the things that kind of struck me about the policy is this was adopted by what presumably could have been 3 out of 5 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to change it requires unanimity along the street. I mean, nowhere in a democracy do you need 100% approval to have something change.
Yeah, no.
But we have done it twice in the village, on 2 streets.
Hmm.
So people have gone out and did their homework, they do legwork. It has happened twice over the last, what, 10 years?
Is that right?
But again, yeah, I think the key school connection is different than the idea of switching what side is plowed. I mean, like, you go back to countryside where they have 200 vehicles in a day, if you want to switch the side, that's a separate issue.
Yeah, okay.
I just have one other comment. So if we're talking about safety of students in the winter with plowing, that's great, but I would also still like the school district to keep this intersection of Maple and Rivendell on the list of crossing guards locations, because kids are crossing from, late August to mid-June. And so we're talking about this small portion of time when there's snow on the ground, but kids are not gonna stick to one side of the sidewalk just because there's a crosswalk further up the block. So we still have the safety issue of students crossing Maple Street and Rivendell.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I think the solution to this problem is actually to have a crossing guard.
I'm
Not
amazed
to,
that
not to
there
have a
isn't
new
one there.
crosswalk and not to have plowing, but rather to have cross guard.
Well, if I mean, the sidewalk exists now that is on that side of the street, or
Right.
the other side of the street.
But the kids aren't gonna,
But when it's not snowing, they're gonna use that other side.
they'll use both. They'll use both. They're kids. And the other thing is neighborhoods churn. And so there may be a time when we have 5 kids using that sidewalk. And so I'm leery of changing policy to, I know, we need to clarify it, but I'm leery of changing policy for today, for the snapshot of who's in the neighborhood today. And that's all.
Okay. Well, so I'd like to get it to crystallize this a little bit and get what are the decisions that we can make tonight. So can we, number one, let me ask this one question. Can we, I guess we have the authority to override our own policy and say we want Rivendell plowed on both sides. Is that correct? Everyone agree with that? We can override this, since we're the policymakers, we can override that and say, well, we want to see it plowed on both sides because there's extenuating circumstances and so forth. So that's one decision we can make. And then the other decision is to give the go-ahead towards having Rick Hamlin look at this and potentially look at the whole issue with putting a crosswalk in there at the intersection of Woods End and Rivendell. Is that correct? Is that another thing?
That's already been looked at.
It's already-
He's already looked at
Yeah.
it. So I got the impression he wanted to do more, or is he ready to go with that?
I thought we were good to go, and I gave Evan, I guess, about $1,500 for us.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood. I thought that was something but not
He's
something.
already studied it.
He's already studied it.
Yep.
Oh, you should
And
get
he
it.
thinks that's okay.
That's the plan he came back, yeah, I think.
His report is in this packet.
I think we can I'd be happy to make a motion to start, and we can,
Let me just ask one more question, Wayne, and that's fine. Is he ready to do that now, or is you're talking about in the
Oh,
springtime?
no, it's springtime, yeah.
Springtime,
That
okay.
paint doesn't stick very good to this weather.
So that wouldn't solve the problem for
No, not for
right
this
now?
winter.
Ah.
Okay, that's what I wanted to
okay,
get at.
that's different.
Okay, yep. So go ahead, Elaine.
Well, the motion I was gonna make was based on the memo, so, now it sounds like we have 2 problems to solve.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify
We have a
that.
long-term one and a
Right.
short-term one.
Right, that's what I was saying.
So, what's the short-term suggestion from staff?
You know, I'd be concerned with changing our plowing without notifying people that we're going to change and start doing both sides.
I suspect
Um,
that Todd came in tonight expecting that if we made a change, it would be implemented this winter.
I don't know what he expects.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's what you were expecting.
Well, I only know what I know, and I've brought this issue to you. I would like to see it, but, I understand the idea of clarifying the policy. So it's very clear why it is done, why it's being done, why it's different than the other streets.
Go ahead.
I mean, if.
I'd be
what we
happy
do-
if you did that, yes.
If what we do is if we can have draft policy language to discuss and debate on the 11th at our next meeting, we theoretically could then approve changes to the policy that could then take place immediately, so that's talking a 2-week time period. And/or wait until after the holiday break. So in a worst case, without any changes, would take a month.
Okay, I don't know, it's, go ahead, Laura.
Obviously, I don't think we're gonna make a decision to plow it tonight, so as we move towards whatever we're moving towards, I would like to have some additional information. One piece being what streets are plowed on both sides today? And if they could be mapped on here.
It is on the map.
It is where?
Yeah, anywhere you see the blue, like for example, Maple Street, if you see, there's two blue lines on either side.
Yeah, class
So
one
it's
to class
already
two.
mapped out,
Could we do it in a different color?
yeah.
And why is some red?
There's 2 different plow routes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So when we have people like today, we threw some new guys in it, said, here, do the red route, here, do the blue route.
So to summarize, outside of the class 1 roads, meaning the main state
Right.
numbered routes, it's
Right.
South Street, a portion of South Street that gets both
That's
sides.
class 2, so
Right.
yes.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Class 1
Thank
to
you.
class 2, yeah.
So outside the class 2, the numbered state highways that go through 5 corners, there's a small portion of South Street that gets plowed on both sides. Are there any others? I didn't see any in my understanding.
Summit Street, which is
Summit.
class 3, because they
Mhm.
get 2 schools, you know, within
Yeah,
a rock's distance, throwing a rock in there.
right.
Prospect for a short period.
Okay.
That's right by the school, yeah, it borders the school property
Yeah.
there, that little spur.
Right.
I believe that's it.
There's that short section of Briar Lane that's now plowed on both sides.
Right, I was gonna say, there's a couple little pieces that are not on there. Hillcrest has not been put in, that new sidewalk there. And yes, he's right, it's a short section between Corduroy and Rivendell.
Yeah.
After they did the Briar Lane project, they put a crosswalk down there, so it made sense. We plowed that little short section there.
The part of Corduroy coming down the hill to where it intersects with
You come-
Rivendell.
Yeah, come down
Yeah.
Corduroy,
Yeah.
you take a right, it's the right-hand side, down to Rivendell, the new crosswalk I put in.
Yeah.
When Briar Lane got reconstructed.
Yeah.
So that's why we plow that little section there, so then you get both sides there. And a lot of developments you'll see, we plow the inner loop,
Mhm.
which is shorter. So down the road, when we take the outer loops out, remove that concrete and they put new ones in the inside, it's less material, less, less travel time for the sidewalk. So that's one of the reasons you'll see that.
So why didn't plow both sides of Summit?
Because of both schools, the 2 schools down there.
Right, but the crosswalk to get from Summit Street to Fleming is on the same side of the street as Summit.
I don't remember the exact details on that. I have no problem, we can skip one if you want. Just do one by
I'm just,
school.
yeah, I was
No,
just curious if
no,
there
it's a good
was,
point, but,
it may have been because Hillcrest didn't have a sidewalk,
Possibly.
and so they maybe walked down that
I
way.
don't remember the details.
Yeah.
Let's put that on the list to see what we can remove.
Well, there might be.
Yeah.
Well, that's a fairly new up there.
No.
Okay, now, it's nice.
Just kidding, for the
Wide,
people,
easy to get to.
just for the people living,
Yes.
watching us at home, I'm only
Yeah,
kidding.
it's a joke.
So what we're thinking of is saying we'll revisit this next week, I mean, at our next meeting, not next week, in 2 weeks, and look, and attack it from a policy decision and seeing if we don't want to revise the policy such that routes like, I guess it wouldn't just be Rivendell, it would be Mansfield and several others that appear to be major connecting routes from neighborhoods.
Mansfield only has sidewalk on one
Yeah,
side.
I can't,
Yeah.
I know, I'm trying to see with some of the others, so to look at some of the others that might be major walking routes, and if we don't want to revise the policy to say how they get plowed, is that what we're saying?
I think if we could get information on which streets, if we could get a sidewalk map without the blue and the red, so we could better understand which streets have 2 sidewalks on them,
Oh, okay.
because Mansfield doesn't have a sidewalk on both sides.
It does north of Pleasant.
Pleasant,
Wi-
right.
A few blocks north of Pleasant,
Yeah.
it has a sidewalk
As it
on
heads
both
toward
sides
Brickyard.
as it goes to
Right.
Brickyard.
Mm.
But when it gets south of
Mansfield?
Brickyard, south,
Pleasant,
what's,
Pleasant.
I'm sorry, could you go over to Mansfield, which is that way?
Rosewood
I should
or-
know, yeah, Rosewood, it,
Right around
from
there.
Rosewood north, it has 2 lanes,
Yes.
but from Rosewood
Yeah.
south, it's only on the east side.
But then you see Briar, when we rebuilt that, a 5-foot sidewalk goes on one side and the other side gets taken out. So that's what we're going to, once we rebuild these roads too.
I
That's
think-
another thing to remember.
I think you'll find there's very few streets that act as a collector to a school that have
Yep, I agree.
sidewalks on two sides.
But I think we're gonna have to be careful how the criteria we use, so we can make it good
And
policy.
you
Lori?
said you had questions plural.
So, well, I don't remember what they were, but I thought of a new one. Could you find out from EWSD where, and if they do, I know they do in some areas, what their map is that they direct kids to walk? Does that make sense? Like, I know they have it around Railroad Avenue and across Lincoln and up by our house. They direct, not that kids follow it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you really
But-
think the kids,
No, but I would like to see what that map is, to see what they consider to be the major walking
Okay.
routes, if that's possible.
Yeah, I'd like to see that too, I didn't realize they had that.
And
I
they may
don't know
not
if
for
they do.
everywhere, I just know they did for like, kind of like this section of.
And
of
then
the
can we
community.
also get the radius of busing that they're looking at, so we can see which parts of these roads fall within the mile, and those that fall outside of the mile of each school?
yeah.
Okay. I got a question in my own mind, but I'm not gonna, I'll work it out in my head.
Well, it's gonna be interesting when they start busing kids and say picking up kids in court or countryside and there's congregated stops and kids are walking down the street where you don't plow to get
Yep.
to a bus stop.
Yeah, I don't know how they're gonna do it.
This really has to be a.
Which is the issue we're dealing with in the town, of having kids that now walk to a congregated stop. They are walking on sidewalks that are not plowed at all.
And so the other thing along with the busing, I can't recall if the policy had changed or if it is going to change. Last I knew, kids of a certain age were going to be required to walk regardless, as long as they live in a certain diameter.
Distance.
Right.
That's right.
Is that still going to be the policy?
If you live within a certain distance, you are walkers.
No matter what, whether the buses are coming in January or not?
Correct.
They have at least a quarter mile minimum and up to a half mile.
So I guess if we could have that as well, and if that could, if, I
Perhaps we
recall
should
seeing a
have
map
guest
of
from
that.
EWSD.
Right, that would
Yes.
be great.
Perhaps we could have
How about
Brian.
The only thing I'd like to say is that at our next meeting, I would like, it's great to do this, but I would like to, if we can, have the meeting end with us making a decision, yes or no, are both sides of Rivendell gonna be plowed? Okay, can we narrow it to that, to make sure that we at least get the information down so that we focus that decision at our next meeting about whether we're gonna go ahead with this? Because the crosswalk solution may be a good solution, the bus solution may be a good solution, but those are pending solutions. Those are promissory solutions. They're not real solutions right now. They're things that might happen. So but right now, if we have a lot of snow, we might want to look at changing our policy for plowing both sides of Rivendell. So what are the criteria we're going to use to think about that?
And what about a short-term solution to be able to get some data on the plowing and time and effort it takes to say, we want to allow plowing for a certain time period to collect that data as well? Because we're
Okay.
getting all this other data, but we're not, I mean, you can tell us an idea, but we're not getting actual ideas of what it does to their schedule to plow that whole street.
To plow both sides of Rivendell?
Right.
Okay. And then, how about the question, I want to ask one more question, because someone raised the issue of, well, what if people on the other side of Rivendell don't want their street plowed? On the other hand, if we think that there's a significant safety issue, I'm not sure, I don't like to be dictatorial or whatever, authoritarian, but if we think this is a safety issue, it is a public property, and if we think that it's necessary for the safety of kids walking to school, that would take priority over people being concerned that their lawns might or might not get dug up, which is the only reason I can think of why someone wouldn't want them plowing on their side of the sidewalk. So,
I agree with
does
that.
anyone have thoughts about that, or do you think we should be concerned about trying to get permission for people? I think once we start down the road of getting permission from people to plow their sidewalk in front of their house, then we're.
I
really
think
not
it stems from whatever criteria we set up. If we
Right.
determine that this is a key connected road,
Then that's it.
Then that's it.
That's it. Okay, I just wanted to make that
We
clear.
have to we should notify them, but.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
And they'll have an appeal process that they have to get X% of residents to sign on to a petition to say that they don't want it to happen.
Okay.
Well, I don't know, do we do that for crosswalks? I mean, like, if we're making, if a key criteria is safety,
Yeah,
then
Yeah,
are we
I'm
letting
not sure.
anybody override that?
I
I
don't
don't know
think
if it
we.
was sidewalk or crosswalk policy. That's a good question.
That's just an example, you know. If it's a
Yeah.
safety
I think
issue,
safety
do you
comes first.
allow for folks to override it?
Yeah, I think as I understand the policy, if people if I live on a street and my side isn't being plowed,
Mhm.
and I'd like my side of the street plowed, and I go around and collect a petition, you know, as long as the other people on the other side of the street don't mind suddenly not having their street plowed, I think that's where it comes
Gotcha.
from.
Yeah.
I don't know that people can say, we don't want you plowing out here,
Mhm.
if we say it's a safety issue.
I got you, yeah.
Okay, so that's a lot, but I would like to I'd like us, if we're gonna put this on the agenda for next time, I'd like us to come away with some decisions, okay?
Mhm.
All right, good. And we have all the data do we think we all understand the data we're looking for to make a decision?
If you don't mind, I'll read
Yes,
what I
please.
believe I got.
Yeah,
Just read my own writing. Well, you asked what streets are plowed on both sides with a map,
Which we have that.
which we have, but we will present it again and try to make sure. EWSD where map to direct kids to walk, do they have a map that directs kids to walk, major walking route, and the major walking routes? What is the radius of busing they are contemplating? That's EWSD, 2 questions there. Can we have Brian attend? I could certainly ask that. How long actually does it take to plow both sides of Rivendell? That'll be a Ricky question for him to review. And then to come up with some types of definitions for key connector.
Would the EWSD walking radius, if that were, I remember seeing a map previously, if we could find that map again.
The walking, busing
Yeah.
radius. And if we can just get an update on to how sure they are for January.
I feel like we've heard that before.
yeah.
Sorry.
Well, he said it was starting in January, and we've scheduled a follow-up meeting for 4 weeks later to give them time to work out any kinks of that start. Because we certainly have a lot of questions and concerns, not only in the village, but in the town of
It's really
what it does.
a much bigger change for the town, I think. Because now they have kids who have to walk, right, and who didn't before.
Well, they not only have kids who have to walk, but they have congregated stops
Right.
where they used to have basically end of driveway pickup
Oh,
service.
interesting, okay.
So,
That's a big difference.
unfortunately, one of the numbers is the actual ridership percentage is not great regardless.
Right.
So a lot of people are not taking the busing. They're either walking or driving or biking, but they are not waiting around for the bus.
And that was part of my statement in the beginning. You know, I don't think we can count on busing taking all these kids to
No.
school.
But-
Because
but-
I know
but
a
it-
lot
but
of
it-
parents
going
who
But
still
it does
have-
change,
It's
it
gonna
does
be an empty
change
bus.
It does.
whether other things
Yes,
for timing, so.
yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Luckily, it is not a village function to bus children to school.
No.
And please don't make it one. So that's what I have. And then one of the other ones was we have a speed bump policy, and should we look at how much percentage total, if we're gonna look for signatures, what other policies have as their signage
Yeah.
rate approval from neighbors? Not that you would use this necessarily if it was a safety issue, but looking at the policy in general, should it be 100%, 80, 60, and should it align with other policies?
Okay.
Great.
I'll try to get that done
Yeah. For a future meeting, I do think we should have a conversation as to whether we want to reopen the policy outside of plowing. Do we want to keep it as it is? And is it still a representation of what we as a village want for our sidewalks?
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable thing, Andrew. I think that's a very good thing. I mean, because the policy, as I think we touched upon, was a money-saving issue. As I remember, it was highly controversial. There's a lot of complaints. And the idea that it's sacrosanct, it can't be revised, or you can't go in and say, let's monkey with this now that we've had it down there for a few years and see if we can't change it. I think it makes perfect sense to think
Yeah.
we can go and look at it again.
Our trip to St. Albans is still relevant in my mind of being on that bus as we were driving through some of the streets, and the city manager, whatever he is, was saying, no, we're not taking sidewalks out, we're putting them in to help create the connectivities.
Right,
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on.
Thank
Okay, thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
So we are not doing, and Rick, thank you for coming, appreciate it. Seriously, thank you very much.
Thanks for wearing your dress hoodie.
So we're not going to be looking at rolling stock transfer. We're going to move on to the manager's report and the trustee meeting schedule. Take it away, Evan.
Hi.
Go ahead.
We just the manager's report. We are looking at the legalities around loitering ordinances. Don't know if you have heard, but Burlington, their loitering ordinance did not pass court muster. So that's kind of a little setback for Chief Gary and our thoughts of what some of our ordinances would say and do. But so we're still looking at some options of what can and can't be done. But recent court cases are not favorable to stopping or moving people that are just on public rights of way. It doesn't bode well for that. We talked a little bit today even about, we can regulate parks. We can tell you the park is closed, let's say from 9 p.m. till 7 a.m. It's closed. There is, if there's no public path that goes through there, there's no activity, you have no reason to be there, it's closed. We can do things like that, but in public sidewalks, public rights of way, we are limited with that. So that's something we've been working on. It is budget season. I've met with almost every village department right now with their budgets. We are putting that together. We have the budget date. I don't want to announce
December 19th.
the 19th. So staff is putting that together, and so we'll be ready for that day. Just been very busy. We are currently just about to put a offer to a candidate for the assessor position. So that'll be going out, and we hope that person accepts. Randy has been with us many years and done a great job. And one of the things that through our process, as a management team and as a staff, we really wanted to focus on the people aspect of that job and the emotional aspect. When people come and tell you they think their taxes are too high, or you have the wrong valuation, and all that emotion, you can have somebody give you the math. But we wanted to make sure we had a candidate that had people skills as well with that. So we're very cognizant of that interaction with people. And Randy was so good and is so good at that. Do you know how many actual filings we get for grievance? None.
That's great.
That's good.
Nice.
None. After he sits down with him and explains how he got to his number, they don't come. So we're looking to keep that tradition. It's hard to say zero forever, but that's the type of person we were looking for, and we found a really qualified candidate. We're about to make that conditional offer, and we'll see how that goes.
Did the job description change at all?
It was updated, but it did not change significantly, but it did get updated. Again, we wanted communication at the forefront. They are gonna have to eventually do a revaluation. It's not quite there legally in their boundaries, but it'll come within the next 5 years or so, probably. But there's a state mandate, you have to be within a range. We're still in a good place, but it'll probably be sometime soon. But no, we look at our job descriptions too, we wanna make sure they're updated. And we're gonna be doing that, as time permits throughout all the job descriptions.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
So we are moving on to, thank you, Evan, trustee comments, concern, and the reading file. Andrew?
If I could, I want to point to just in the reading file, the minutes from the capital committee. I wanted to just make sure that I brought this out in the sense of making sure that the goal around, so in the minutes, one of the things that's discussed is a desire to explore funding options outside of just the traditional, the current methods.
Mhm.
And so what I want to make sure that we get is, one is a capital committee that you guys are okay with it, number one.
Yep.
And number two, if you have any kind of roadblocks, any kind of deal breakers, if you have any questions, concerns, to let me know before we do this, what I would say is pure fact-finding information and pure fact-finding research, to look into how could we possibly diversify the ways in which we take in funding to help pay for capital projects besides just raise taxes and or bonding. Some of the things that are in the minutes are things like a tax increment financing and a local option tax, which those are in there again for research purposes and not a we think that Essex Junction should go forward with both of these or either of these options as they exist today, but rather let's do some research to understand how this may or may not work.
Mhm. I, for one, have not only do I not have a problem with it, I think it's, I think when the capital committee was created, it was actually it was in sort of a core mission. And I think I absolutely think it's right on. I think you're right on doing it. So
Yeah.
Personally, I think it's fine. I don't know, that's just me, but. Elaine?
Can I just ask a question
Mhm.
about looking toward the future
Yes.
of the capital committee? I don't think the town has one, and I don't think the town does capital planning the way the village does. And so I'm wondering if conversations or thoughts can start about looking at how the town does capital planning. Because if we're looking at revenue sources, it would be counterproductive to all the other work we're trying to do to have the village go off on its own to do a certain kind of revenue generation, when perhaps in partnership, things could happen, and then we could standardize capital project funding and planning across both communities. I think it's time to start exploring that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
I think it's a good idea. I believe that, again, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that the town capital is pretty much the town engineer. It's contained, it's entirely within his purview, isn't it? Is it not?
The town engineer and the public works director in consult with the town manager.
Right.
They present the plan
Yeah.
to the select board. The town does use impact fees quite a bit
Right.
for their capital. The village does not.
Yep.
So part of the fact finding, if I may, would be to look into what other communities are doing.
Yep.
So inclusive of the town, but also then looking into Colchester, South Burlington, other communities within our county and beyond. Are there other things that are happening that neither one of us are doing and don't know of?
Mhm.
That's great.
Yep.
And to that end, I sat in on the capital committee, and with that, staff would certainly be a resource to help them with that research and other options, and I'd be happy to meet with state officials to find out more about how the state of Vermont does its local option taxing. I believe there are 3 segments you can do, and you don't have to do all of them, you can do any segment you want. And I
Yeah.
believe, and that's what I want to find out, you can exclude certain items within those categories too. But the goal nevertheless is to find funding sources for capital. And Andrew, I'm gonna tax, pun intended, your memory. I believe we had over $11 million of projects identified.
Yep.
Over what kind of window, timeframe?
In terms of the capital plan that exists, future.
So
It's-
like
we
going
don't-
all the way out to 2029, like that long chart that
Mhm.
Lauren.
Beyond 2029, we don't have $11 million budgeted.
Honestly, I thought that was less than I expected, to be honest. I
Well,
thought we were looking at
that-
40
that is
million.
just
That's
of
just
the-
what we know.
That is
Right.
just of the, that is
Yeah.
just of the projects you scored.
Right,
Yeah.
That also
Correct,
did not
okay.
include public buildings.
Right.
right.
Mhm.
Or other, or things like our fire station. I know you just spent a lot of money on this building. You
Right.
now own 75 Maple, you own Park Street School,
Plus all the pipes underground.
Yep.
Right.
pipes underground. While I don't know, we don't own the Amtrak station.
No.
Wish we
Wish we
did.
did.
But no,
No, I don't think you actually do, but what
Oh.
you'd like to do is build a new one.
Right.
You could just best believe Amtrak is not putting a penny
Right.
into that structure.
Oh, no, we already
We
know.
know.
And so, for the people at home.
But they'll be happy to control what ours looks like.
Right.
Yes, so if you think in those terms, it's $11 million just of the projects we've identified, and not even including the public buildings.
Right.
That the fire station is circa 1955.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Well, this is.
65.
This
I
is, this is
apologize,
why, when we had the discussion before, when we look at this, you see, you're right on in the sense of saying, our buildings, infrastructure are in the same sense, in the same vein as water lines, sewer lines, sidewalks, bridges, it's all capital. And this is why when we looked at, we're having a space, we're looking at doing a space study, if the recommendation comes back and says, oh, you need more space, you need a bigger fire station, you need a bigger public works building, I'm thinking, well, wait a second. That, yes, those are capital needs, but we have way more pressing capital needs than maybe finding more space in a public works building or fire station. I mean, if the village of Essex Junction is gonna outlay capital money, go to the MAT and find extra capital money from impact fees or a TIF or impact tax or anything like that, that money, to me, would be, first and foremost, the priority would be streets, sidewalks, et cetera.
Yeah.
Buildings would be way down on the
Well,
list.
You
So-
prioritize it.
Right, but that's why I was a little leery about the space study, because if it comes back with, well, look, this is a high priority, well, understand the funding situation.
Right.
Sure.
It may be a high priority in terms of operational space, but in terms of who's gonna get the funds, it's a low priority. I'm just warning that's just me.
You're getting a lot of nods on this.
Okay, we're getting big time
so-
nods over there,
yeah.
okay, I just wanted to point that out, so that's why I just wanted to raise that issue. Sorry, go ahead, didn't mean to
No, I think
sidetrack
this
the
is great that you
conversation.
guys are doing this, so.
Yeah, I absolutely, I think it's right on, yeah, perfect.
And just also being very mindful of staff's time, given it is
Yep.
budget season.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I had one thing in the reading file. I just wanted to raise this. I think it's understood, but the tree committee has a big, long narrative and a lot of information, great science, all about the emerald tree borer, but the end point is that they're requesting additional money in the tree budget, which we may or may not get, but we have to understand that's a separate issue for us to approve. I just want them to understand, just because that's in the reading file, and we go, okay, we saw the reading file, that doesn't mean they get the extra $12,000. I just wanted to make that clear.
I wanted it in the reading file. I had some questions for them about some of the stuff. In fact, a couple of the trees are likely to be removed by the state when they do some work up by West Street. It's de minimis compared to, I just don't want us to spend money now
Yeah.
on those trees when the state may take them out in 4 or 5 years. We could focus on some other things. But yes, everybody would like $5, $10, or $15,000 more in this budget. Everybody would.
Everyone wants
And I'm beating them back as best I can, but that's their cost. The
Yeah.
town itself has a tree plan that it also would like to fund, but is probably half of what we can do. One of the ideas that I would like, as we talk sort of village and town, is do we get a better bang for the buck if we do it together? And you end up renting a piece of equipment, they rent it by the week.
Right.
Do we get our forces together, bang out a week or two of tree removal and a week or two of stumping together and bang it out as staff to staff, and then see where we are on an annual basis of where we are in our thing, and, you know, what can we get done for a total of 11 or 12,000, something like that. 6, 5.5, 6 apiece, and maybe that's more manageable, and then see where we are and see where the little pest is in timeframe.
Well, so we're just acknowledging this report, we're not
Right,
authorizing the work to start.
Yeah.
Right.
Because that, the timing is important. If it doesn't show up in the village, there's no sense in cutting down trees.
Yeah,
So-
well, there's a couple of reasons, and I don't expect that you all read the report, but, yeah, it's in your file, but one of the comments, and the town had done this a couple months ago, not just for Emerald Ash Borer, but trees in general. When you get a diseased tree, right, if it's in the parkway, we come and we get it, we pull it out. It's one tree, right? But it looks bad in front of the house, but that's one thing. We plant a 2.5-inch caliber
Right.
in its replacement. And in about 10 years, you got something going, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's now like that, you know. But when you start taking out multiple trees
Yeah,
on
big
the
gap.
same street, it starts looking deforested. And that's not the look. So one of the things in these tree plans is, you don't go down the whole street, I don't wanna, name a street, and take out all 6 trees all at once. You actually only wanna take out 1 or 2
Right.
and immediately replant. So those trees have a time to come up. So when you come back for trees 3 and 4,
Right.
it doesn't look like you've deforested the whole block. That's kind of the goal with some of this too. And that's why in the future you'll see, why did they leave that ash tree and why did they leave that ash tree?
Right.
It could be
There's a
healthy
method, right.
and we're going to get it. The other thing is the cost of removing these trees once the insect is here, and or if they're infested, will be 2 to 3 times this cost.
Yep.
And the regulations of what you can do with the tree material,
Change.
you can't put them in landfills, you can't do any of that. The cost is exorbitant. That's why we're trying to be proactive. And it's heart-wrenching to have to do this to a live tree that's not diseased.
They grow back.
So that's why there'll be some changes to this, but we'll highlight some of the changes, but just because they asked for 11,000.
No, and we very
I don't
much
know.
give it to them, but it's something that has to be
But it'll
approved
change from every
separately.
year based upon your priorities too, you may.
Okay, anything else? Trustee comments? Elaine? No? Everyone good? Reading file? Everyone good? Okay, so we are on to the consent agenda, and I have one change that Mr. Kudry, who, in regard to the multi-use path, contacted me for item 4 in the minutes of the last trustee meeting. Item number 4, guest presentations and public hearings, line down here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Line 4, it says, following concerns of the 30 rose bushes planted by Public Works a few weeks ago near the retaining wall, only 10 remain. He said only 20 remain. He said 10 were pulled out and 20 remain.
Okay, thank you.
He wanted me to clarify that for you. So I'll make that change to the agenda, to the minutes. Elaine?
And I just have one, I think it's a correction. Item 6B, paragraph 3, 9th line down, it's, Mr. Karen asked Ms. Renner, I think Lori asked, I think it's Ms. Houghton asked,
Where are you?
right here, when we were talking about the electric vehicles, charging stations, and you asked
I
Irene
asked, I mean,
about that, so it's Houghton, not Karen,
Is that line 9
of paragraph 3.
oh, paragraph 3?
6, 7, 8, 9, yeah, and so it says Mr. Karen, at the end it should be Ms. Houghton.
that's Mr.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
We get those two mixed up all the time.
I can see why.
Okay, so, any
Sense.
other changes in the minutes? Everyone good? So I'll move that we approve the minutes as a, pull them out, I think, we pull them
Oh,
out
the
separately.
consent agenda?
Hmm?
Oh,
Approve
okay,
the minutes as
so,
amended?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as agended, as amended, as amended,
I'll second.
okay? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And so now we're on to anything else?
We have
in
to
the
approve the warrants of the consent agenda, because we only approve the minutes.
Yeah, so we have to approve the whole consent agenda, really,
I'll move we approve the consent agenda.
okay?
Second.
Any further, any second? Who seconds?
I did.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So the consent agenda is approved.
And now we're done.
Well, not yet. Someone has to make a motion to.
I'll move we adjourn.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Just wanted to clarify the adjourning thing from the last time I jumped.